raised in Chestertown, and I left after high school to join the military, and then came back a few years later and lived there until it was time to be a missionary.
Yeah. And my connection, we met in Chestertown. So I was actually there doing training at the Whitsitt Center before I left to go to Zambia for a month to do a psychology internship in Zambia. But I did 2 weeks of training at the Whitsitt Center. And during those 2 weeks, Frank and I met. And basically, a little over a year later, we were married, and I was living in Chestertown, which is fun because I'd never even been to the Eastern Shore before. And all of a sudden, I was living in Kent County and working in Queen Anne's. And yeah, so I became a Eastern Shore Chestertown resident.
Shortly after we got into Costa Rica, everything was still shut down because of the pandemic, which made it challenging to find a ministry to help. And a friend of mine got me on a tour with some other volunteers, and we drove around San Jose looking at different ministries. And the last one on the trip was the area where we serve, Las Gradas. And so I could tell it appeared to be a pretty rough area. And I was thinking, this probably is a place where we belong. And once we started going down these steep stairs, I could hear children playing and laughing. And I was trying to figure out, where in this dangerous environment are these children having such a great time? And we got to the bottom, and I found the center where our friend Marielis runs it. And that's where I looked around, and I was like, this is where we belong. These are the kids we're supposed to be helping.
So yeah, so Las Gradas is actually like the poorest part of the largest slum in Central America. So it's kind of like, it's a very large slum that's been around for like almost 30 years, more than 30 years now. And within it are different neighborhoods. And where we work, it's only accessible on foot. And you go down these steps down to the river, where the river has pretty much become the trash site for that area. And the center where we work used to be the main trash site, and they cleared all of the trash away and then built the foundation and then kept going from there. And so this basically was the only empty space that they had.
I did a missionary trip with co-fellowship in Ecuador 2 times. And the first time we went on our mission trip, that's where I got the call to be a missionary. And from there on, my world went upside down.
Yeah, and my first trip ever when I was 14, I actually went to Costa Rica. I had no idea I'd come back as an adult. But so yeah, my first trip was to Costa Rica, and then I've been to the Dominican Republic for a short-term trip, and then Zambia, Africa. Yeah, so we are at the center 2 to 3 days a week. The days we're not there, we have our house as our headquarters for the CoLabaoradores International Costa Rica. So we usually doing office work those days, but the days we're at the center in Las Gradas, we have 2 daughters that are 4 and 1. And so our 4-year-old daughter, we get her ready for preschool and drop her off at school. And then we go right from dropping her off to driving into the center. And so that's, usually about an hour of traffic,
Yeah.
Downtown capital traffic. So, but yeah, and then we park probably about 15 minutes away from where we actually work, because like I said, it's only accessible by foot. So I carry our baby on my back, and Frank carries whatever supplies we have to take down. Usually we have all the groceries and art supplies or whatever is needed. So we walk down and then get ready for the day. We always have 2 groups of kids, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And so we start with just doing a team meeting with our other volunteers that come, getting ready for the day. And then they usually go to start picking up all our kids. So our leaders go and pick the kids up from their houses and then come back. And so I'm kind of the person that does all of the overseeing prep work and just kind of in a support role, since I'm also, of course, with our baby. And so for me, it's looking like once the kids arrive, I'm getting Play-Doh out for them to play with or other games, chatting with them, taking attendance, and just, hanging out with them until all the kids arrive. And then usually me or one of our other leaders will do our main Bible study lesson. And so we work through a very specific theme throughout the whole semester. Like in the past, we've done emotional intelligence, and that Ephesians 6 talks about for the kids to put on. So we're just going through all these different themes. This year, we're going into very specific things that the kids go through daily or in their lives. So we're going to look at things like the machismo culture, like gender favoritism, and how that affects both the girls and the boys. We're looking at drugs and alcohol, the pressure to join a gang, and sexual abuse, because that's a very rampant thing that usually starts at a very young age for these kids. So we think about 90% have probably suffered one form or another of abuse. So we're really getting ready to dig into some tough topics this semester, but showing the kids that even though we wish we could change their situation overnight, obviously that's not something we can, but our goal is to show them how Jesus can help them through those darkest moments, and that they have us to depend on as well, that we're there for them no matter what happens.
We just have different roles. My job, I'm a small group leader. So while Brittany is setting up in the center, my job is to go to the children's houses and pick up the kids that are in my particular group. It's one of my favorite parts of the job, just to go throughout the neighborhood and find the kids, talk to their parents a little bit. And we've done it so long now, everyone's used to me, and I'm just a regular around the neighborhood. And I just have this army of kids running behind me as we're heading back down to the center. I'm just trying to keep up with them, though. So, also building the trust of the community, for the children and the families to see that we weren't just there on a short-term mission trip, that we lived in Costa Rica, and that we were going to be a consistent presence in their lives. And that took a lot of time to build that trust. For a while, the light of the boys, they would joke with me, but they wouldn't really have serious conversations because they didn't think I was going to stick around. But now that we've been there for so long, we've built really strong relationships, and actually built strong relationships with their families as well, where they welcome us into their houses, and we have really good conversations with them as well.
Because we weren't just going in and trying to start our own project out of thin air, the fact that we came alongside a local Costa Rican woman who had already been there for years, I think that's what helped so much, because they were like, oh, you work with Marielos. Okay, we can trust you because we trust her.
Right.
So I think people that come in without, having someone on the inside, basically, it takes a lot longer, because this isn't even just like, most of the people we work with are Nicaraguan refugees, and a lot of them are from indigenous tribes as well. Some of them don't speak Spanish, or it's a different version of Spanish even. And so like that trust to build up definitely started first with Marielos, and then we kind of were able to piggyback on that. But it definitely, having the longevity there. Yeah, so we are CoLabaoradores International missionaries, and the way that CoLabaoradores always operates is we come alongside local ministries that are already operating but might need extra resources. And then once they're self-sufficient and no longer need the extra help, then we can move on to another that needs help or expand it in different ways. And so the project we work with is actually underneath another organization that's called Christ for the City, Cristo para la Ciudad in Spanish. But it's so hidden away that they were lacking resources, both financial and in people to help. Marielos is the only person that works there. Like before we came, she's the only person there that wasn't from the slum. All of our volunteers and help are young adults who grew up going through her program, and then she trained up to help lead. So like finding people that are willing to go to the slum at all is difficult, but then to this spot, since it's the poorest of the poor, it's very hard to find people willing to go. And so that's kind of like, so basically we're in a partnership with them, and we help provide resources and time and people. And so that's kind of, it's unique, but we found it works well to partner with locals rather than try to start something ourselves.
The area where we serve, I feel like it's a forgotten area. It's an area unknown. There are people who live in the slum of Carpio who don't even know that the community of Las Gradas exists. And the ones who do know, they look down on this group of people. And I just want people to know that the people in the community of Las Gradas, they do exist, and they matter, and their children matter, and their families matter, and that's why we're there.